As we mentioned before, each mark rounding creates a new set of problems and variables for the team to tackle. The leeward mark presents one of the great opportunities to make gains on competitors in the fleet. This is true for one simple reason. There are lots of mistakes made here, particularly as the larger fleets condense when approaching these objectives. The same simple goals apply at the leeward mark roundings that we discussed at the windward mark. Round with as much control as possible, round with the greatest latitude of options in clear air, and quickly find the fastest gear for the new leg of the course. The big picture issue when approaching the leeward mark is setting up for a tactical rounding. Ley lines, as drawn in diagrams, are rarely the same in action, because a scow, like a car, can only maintain speed when turning at a certain radius. The angle of entry into the mark can be right beside it, but leaves room for another to gain an inside position when exiting the mark. So, proper tactical roundings start long before the turn, with setting the boat up with an approach that accounts for dousing the spinnaker in addition to the turn leading up to the mark, so that on exiting the mark, there is no room to spare for another boat to get inside. Judging the ley line for a tactical rounding is a factor for a straight rounding or one that incorporates a jibe, because enough room needs to be added in to accommodate the jibe as well. Often the turn on a good tactical rounding doesn't begin until the edge of the 2 boat length circle. Similar to the windward mark, the rate of turn is controlled primarily by the rate at which the main is sheeted in. But while the scow generally prefers to sail with about 15 degrees of heel, or the leeward bilgeboard vertical in the water, a powerful sail plan like this requires that the boom not touch the water when rounding, because it can overpower the rudder and flip the boat, as demonstrated here with this MC. So, in moments of question, when you want to maintain control, sailing the boat flat is a safe bet. And generally that requires the team to trim the vang on as you are rounding the mark, and the mainsail is sheeted in rather than before the rounding. There are essentially 2 douses that may be performed at a leeward mark. They are the windward douse, which happens as the team approaches on port tack, and the leeward douse, which happens as the team approaches on starboard tack. Both douses have the basic aim of bringing the spinnaker down on the port side so that it may be launched again properly at the windward mark. Both douses require the driver to consider the distance necessary to travel on a run to unload the spinnaker and douse it properly. Because the leeward mark rounding is so significant, the driver focuses on the tiller, mainsheet, and the backstays and twings if installed, in addition to making the turn at the right rate and with the right positioning. The driver has to consider which jibe he or she is approaching the leeward mark on in preparing the boat for the rounding. When approaching on port tack and no jibe is necessary, the driver will likely begin the turn near the edge of the 2 boat length circle and abeam of the mark, keeping in mind the rate at which the driver can trim in the mainsheet. A good driver will trim the mainsail at a rate to assist the turn of the boat around the leeward mark and at the same time maintain control in the rounding. When approaching on starboard and a jibe is going to be necessary, it's advised that you perform a leeward takedown early so as to set up for the jibe, calling overlaps on other boats, the mark rounding, and ensuring that you exit the mark tight to the leeward side to make sure that the other boats cannot round inside. Particularly with a main this size, it's easy to lose track of the room necessary to complete a jibe when other boats are present. While rounding, the driver trims the main sheet to control the rate of turn. At some points, the amount of main sheet that must be trimmed in may require the driver to steer with his leg while using 2 hands. But for those who use a center tiller extension, the main should be trimmed using the traditional tiller extension and main sheet 2-hand technique. After the rounding, the driver is in the straps hiking out and fine-tuning the mainsheet for the new upwind course. The middleman is focused on one mission, getting the large spinnaker doused quickly and effectively so that the team can make the turn at the mark and proceed on to the next leg. This role has one routine for the windward douse and another for the leeward douse. On the windward douse, the middleman flies the kite as long as possible, even without the pole, trims the windward sheet around to reach the sail, gathers the spinnaker into the boat and into the bag, hikes out, and fine-tunes the vang, traveler, and backstay 8-1 if installed. On the leeward douse, the middleman drops the windward board in preparation for the jibe, releases the guy, trims the leeward sheet around to reach the sail, gathers the spinnaker into the boat and into the bag, helps the boom through the jibe, raises the windward board, hikes out, and fine-tunes the vang, traveler, and 8-1 backstay if installed. You can clearly see that there is more to accomplish in the leeward douse because of the jibe and the shifting of the boards. This is part of the reason why more room may be necessary to complete the leeward douse and rounding than the windward douse. The bowman needs to be a detail person in many ways because of the methodical nature of the job, and he or she may be the first one to get a look out over the course after the rounding. So, it's a good idea for this role to pass the first critical information back after the rounding. Because the douses have different procedures, this job also has two different routines. On the windward douse, the bowman steps in to ready the halyard for release, adjusts the outhaul and jib cars for the beat, drops the leeward board all the way down, stows the pole on the starboard side of the boom, releases the spinnaker halyard, grabs the jib sheet, hikes out, and looks up the course for opportunities. On the leeward douse, the bowman adjusts the outhaul and jib cars for the beat, releases the halyard, stows the pole in the boom, grabs the jib sheet to trim, ducks the boom, hikes out while trimming in on the jib, and looks up the course for opportunities. Leeward mark roundings can be described as being all about the tactical rounding, because it puts you in a position to seize an offensive opportunity should the boat ahead make a mistake, and it defends against the boat breathing down your neck from behind. Execution of a good tactical rounding is largely dependent on your ability to place the boat on a good ley line or course of entry into the rounding, and your ability to handle the boat once in that rounding. Executing the rounding well requires that the spinnaker be down before the team begins the turn, and done successfully often leaves the team well prepared for making the next decision on the course.